She was the sharp-tongued TV anchor who apologized for nothing, and for years, she was one of the most popular characters on television. Murphy Brown doesn't get talked about like Friends or Frasier or Seinfeld, but the show won 18 Emmy Awards and, at its peak, was the third most watched program in the entire country. The show was so influential, it set off a political firestorm, becoming a focus of a presidential election to the point where a whopping 70 million Americans were glued to their sets, waiting to see what Murphy Brown would do next. But what's even crazier, the show as we know it was one twist of fate away from not happening, and now you can't find the show anywhere. This is the rise, the real-world firestorm, and the disappearance of Murphy Brown, one of the most popular and culturally explosive sitcoms in television history. Before we get started, hit that like button if you watched Murphy Brown back in the day, and subscribe for more retro TV deep dives. So let's go back to the start. A writer and producer named Diane English had just finished her run on My Sister Sam, a CBS sitcom starring Pam Dauber. Her Warner Brothers development deal had just expired, and she came in with a new pitch, a workplace comedy set in a Washington, D.C. newsroom. The main character was a hard-charging, nationally famous investigative journalist in her mid-40s, returning to work after a month-long rehab stint at the Betty Ford Center, and CBS didn't like it. First, they wanted the main character to be in her mid-20s or early 30s to be more accessible to a broad primetime audience. They wanted a Heather Locklear type. English argued that the character's career history and gravitas wouldn't make any sense if she were, say, 27. So that was creative battle number one. The second battle, CBS wanted nothing to do with a hard-edged, abrasive, recovering alcoholic. The network's solution was to swap the Betty Ford Center for a spa. Yes, cucumbers on the eyes, green tea, and massages. Not exactly a compelling backstory. Anyway, this creative battle continued until a crazy twist of fate intervened. The Writers Guild of America went on strike. And here's where Diane English won the war. She turned in her plot script just one day before the walkout began. Because of the work stoppage, CBS was legally barred from requesting rewrites. So when it came to casting, they had to audition for the role as written, and English wanted Candice Bergen. Bergen was in her early 40s and had shown comedic chops in her hosting appearances on SNL. Still, CBS wanted Locklear or a Locklear type. But because of the strike, they had to cast someone who fit the script as is, which was a 40-something-year-old. So despite a shaky audition and network doubts, Bergen won the role. And there was no going back because by the time the strike ended in August of 1988, there wasn't enough time for the network to go another direction if they wanted a November premiere. English later admitted that if it weren't for that strike, CBS eventually would have gotten their way and softened the role. In other words, the strike saved the show. As for the rest of the cast, Faith Ford earned the role of Corky Sherwood, a perky former Miss America reporter hired to replace Murphy during her Betty Ford stay, who then never left. Joe Regalbuto was cast as Frank Fontana, an investigative reporter and Murphy's best friend, the only person who calls her Murph. Grant Shawd was Miles Silverberg, a 25-year-old Harvard graduate and FYI's new executive producer. Charles Kimbrough as Jim Dial, a stiff veteran actor who affectionately calls Murphy Slugger. And Robert Pastorelli was cast as Eldon Bernecki, the laid-back house painter Murphy hires to repaint her Georgetown townhouse, who somehow stays employed there for 6 seasons. And while casting was falling into place, the show got one more fortunate bounce. While the strike was going on, networks had to fill their schedules with something, and that something turned out to be news magazines. Shows like 48 Hours ran because they were unscripted and therefore strike-proof. So by the time Murphy Brown premiered in November 1988, American audiences had spent months watching real-life TV news magazine programming and were, therefore, primed for a show that satirized the exact format they'd been watching all summer. The writer's strike that hurt virtually every other show ended up creating the perfect cultural moment for Murphy Brown. The stage was set for the premiere, which happened on November 14, 1988. In the pilot episode titled Respect, Murphy returns to FYI, a fictional 60-minute style news magazine, for the first time after her stay at Betty Ford. On top of navigating life without alcohol or cigarettes, she's handed a brash new executive producer, perky beauty queen anchor, and she's got a painter who won't leave her house. 19.2 million viewers watched that first episode, and by the end of season 1, the show had averaged 14.9 million viewers and was the 36th most watched show in the country, a solid debut. Critics praised Bergen's performance and English's sharp writing, and CBS renewed it without hesitation. And the show just got more popular from there. In season 2, the show settled into its rhythm: newsroom politics, personal storylines, and the parade of secretaries that would become a running joke for the entire series run. Murphy would end up with 93 secretaries over the show's life, the 93rd being Bette Midler. The show finished 26th in viewership that season, and if they weren't already, CBS were about to thank their lucky stars the writer's strike stopped them from changing the show's direction, because in season 3, the show broke into the top 10 for the first time, becoming the 6th most watched show in the country. And then in season 4, it hit its peak, number 3 in the Nielsen rankings, behind only 60 Minutes and Roseanne, averaging 18.6 million viewers per episode. And the reason for that peak was simple: Murphy got pregnant. After reuniting with her ex-husband Jake, an underground radical who made it clear he had no interest in being a father, Murphy Brown chose to have the baby and raise it alone. The season 4 finale, Birth 101, which aired May 18, 1992, drew 33.7 million viewers for the episode in which Murphy gave birth to her son, Avery. Real-life journalists Katie Couric, Faith Daniels, Joan London, Mary Alice Williams, and Paula Zahn attended Murphy's fictional baby shower, which made the whole situation feel that much more real. And for some, specifically the sitting vice president, it was perhaps too real, because the next day, Murphy Brown would become the national story. On May 19, 1992, just a day after the season 4 finale, Vice President Dan Quayle delivered a speech in San Francisco. The speech was mostly about the 1992 LA riots and his argument that the breakdown of family structure was the root cause of social unrest. But then he said this: "It doesn't help matters when primetime TV has Murphy Brown, a character who supposedly epitomizes today's intelligent, highly paid professional woman, mocking the importance of fathers by bearing a child alone and calling it just another lifestyle choice." That line became front page news. It dominated headlines and news broadcasts. Quayle's broader policy arguments were completely eclipsed by those 2 sentences about a fictional TV character. And then the war of words began. Diane English, who was departing as showrunner at the time, went out guns blazing. She fired back: "If the vice president thinks it's disgraceful for an unmarried woman to bear a child, then he'd better make sure abortion remains safe and legal." This feud was a defining cultural moment of the 1992 presidential election. I'm not saying it lost Bush the election, but it didn't help, especially when you had Slick Willie playing the sax on Arsenio just a few weeks later. Anyway, all eyes were on how Murphy Brown would respond when the show returned to air in September, just a few months before the election. And the response was, well, let's just say direct. The 1-hour season 5 premiere was titled "You Say Potato, I Say Potato," which was a direct reference to Quayle's infamous spelling gaffe. He had erroneously corrected a student's spelling of potato with an OE. In the episode, Murphy watches footage of Quayle's speech, then responds on air by staging a special FYI segment celebrating diverse American families. And she arranges for a truckload of potatoes to be dumped in front of Quayle's residence. 70 million viewers watched it. For scale, that's 41% of all television households in America. And when Bergen won an Emmy that year, she thanked Dan Quayle in her acceptance speech. Murphy Brown ended that season as the 4th most watched show in America. The political controversy had boosted the show to its peak popularity. And as we all know, on the other side of the peak, it's nothing but downhill. And in season 6, the ratings slide began. The show went from 4th to 9th in viewership, then in season 7 it dropped to 16th. This is where we lost Eldon the Painter, with Robert Pastorelli leaving to lead his own sitcom, Double Rush, which lasted only 1 season. Season 8 slid to 18th in the ratings, and this is where things started to unravel. Grant Shaw exited at the end of the season to pursue other opportunities. his character, Miles, was promoted to a big job in New York, a move that also ended his improbable marriage to Corky. And in season 9, the show brought in Lily Tomlin to play Kay Carter Shepley, a veteran television producer with zero journalism experience. But any gains from adding Tomlin were erased by a time slot change. The show left its Monday night home for Wednesday nights. The audience didn't follow, and so the ratings slide continued. The show ended season 9 ranked 34th in the country. At this point, the writing was on the wall. 9 seasons, heck of a run, and the show deserved a proper goodbye. So when CBS renewed Murphy Brown for a 10th and final season, they brought back Diane English to make sure it ended right. "I wasn't really pleased with how the series was evolving," English said. "I wanted to sort of get back to our roots and tackle a serious subject. And that serious subject was breast cancer. The entire 10th season followed Murphy's diagnosis, surgery, chemotherapy, and recovery. The network had initially floated a different direction. Bergen recalled that executives wanted Murphy to just struggle through menopause, just like they wanted her to come back to work after going to a spa, right? Anyway, Bergen and English told them menopause is not jeopardizing. Either way, the breast cancer arc happened, and the cultural impact was measurable. The number of American women who got mammograms that year increased by 30%, and Bergen received an award from the American Cancer Society for her role in raising awareness. The series finale aired May 18, 1998. Murphy learns her cancer is in remission. She interviews God, played by Alan King, in a dream sequence. Edward R. Murrow, who died in 1965, was creatively inserted into the show using archival footage. Julia Roberts, Bette Midler, George Clooney, and Mike Wallace all guest starred. And Diane English herself appeared in a cameo as the nurse who delivered Murphy's good results, which was only fitting as she's the one who fought for the show to be what it was. In the final scene, Murphy walks through her Georgetown townhouse apparently alone, and then Eldon appears, Robert Pastorelli, back for one last visit, offering to touch up the place. Nice touch indeed. 17.4 million viewers watched the finale, the biggest audience the show had drawn in 20 months. All told, Murphy Brown ran for a whopping 247 episodes across 10 seasons and earned 62 Emmy nominations, winning 18. That included Outstanding Comedy Series in 1992 and Bergen's 5 wins for Outstanding Lead Actress. After her 5th win, Bergen declined all further nominations. She held the record for most Emmy wins for a single role for over 2 decades. Now, despite how successful the show was, the show isn't brought up in the same way Frasier and Seinfeld are. In fact, it's largely forgotten, and there are a few reasons why. First, it flopped in syndication. The show's attention to current events, which made it electrifying in the moment, became a liability in reruns. The cultural references aged quickly, making the show a time capsule of sorts. And then there was the Motown soundtrack that was central to the show's identity. It was expensive to license. Warner Home Video released only the first season on DVD in 2005. Sales were so poor that the remaining 9 seasons were never released. As of 2026, Murphy Brown is not available on any major streaming platform. Now, the show did come back in 2018 when CBS ordered a 13-episode revival. The idea was that, with politics being such a hot-button issue once again, Murphy Brown would once again be relevant. And it didn't work out. The ratings were low and CBS canceled it after 1 season. The show's moment had passed. And really, this was a show that lived and thrived in the moment. It was topical, relevant to its time, and that's what made it a top 5 hit for years. It shaped politics and almost certainly saved lives through breast cancer awareness. It is widely credited with helping normalize single mother characters and uncompromising career women on television. In that sense, Murphy Brown lives on in many ways, even if you can't find it. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like and subscribe for more retro TV deep dives. Thanks for watching.